Sub was a very fat white lady, but I didn't want to really say anything, so I was just being nice. This time we were learning about slavery, and since I'm one of the only black kids in the class, she was like, do you know that you wouldn't be able to see these people in our classroom if slavery was still a thing? And then she started pointing at me and talking about me being super black. So I called her a wrinkly fat old bitch whose kitty is probably already stretched out. That's why nobody wanted her flat ass. Except for the homeless man who digs in our garbage cans at our school.
In 5th grade and we had a new teacher who was really chill. I don't know what if I was sick, but I had to shit man. Like bad. So I ask if I can go. He says yes. So I go, but my best friend at the time thought she would go too. So we both get there and I go into the stall and do my business. I'm in there for like an hour. No exaggeration. And the bathroom smells so bad. Like absolutely horrendous. Do I care? No. I wash my hands and go back to class. Teacher didn't question it. The next thing you know, we have a tornado drill. Where does the entire class go? The girls' bathroom. Now that isn't the only problem. I figured I was in the clear because the girl I went with was my friend. Boy, was I wrong. This bitch looks at me and goes, it was her, and being in 5th grade, boys don't know girl shit or they don't want to believe it. Thanks, Maddie. I didn't have friends until the end of 8th grade, you bitch. I didn't even bother changing her name. I'm just kidding about her being a
Extremely toxic best friend story time. So when I was in 8th grade, there was this boy. And this boy would go around telling almost every girl that he liked her. And I was one of those girls. And he would do stuff with all of us. And there were like 11 of us. So we all hated each other. Especially this one girl, and we're gonna call her Abby. And every time we saw each other, we would be super mean to each other. Well, a year passed, we stopped talking to this kid, and I bumped into her at homecoming and basically apologized. So after that, we became best friends. And everything was good until every time I told her about a guy, she would start talking to them. Like this one boy that I was Snapchatting and talking to, she accidentally sent nudes to him and said, oh, sorry, I meant to send them to my boyfriend. So then she called one of my other best friends and said, no, it actually wasn't an accident. And of course he told me because he was my best friend. So I was like, whatever, and stopped talking to the boy. And she did it again.
Story time. So this was 2 years ago and I was at school and it was a normal day until the principal went on the speaker and said, we're in lockdown, go in your closets. So we went ahead and went in the closets. We were all confused. Some people were scared. Everyone was like kind of asking the teacher what was going on and stuff. Now, during this time, I wasn't asking anything or saying anything because I knew during a lockdown, you don't want to say anything. So if there is someone in the school, they won't find where you are. But I was still listening to them because I was curious like everyone else. So while everyone was asking the questions, one girl stood up and said, if you're not going to say what's going on, I'm going to get out of the closet. The teacher yelled at her and told her no. And the teacher yelled loud, so whoever was in the school obviously heard. So the door opened and everyone became silent. And so basically for part 2, welcome to part 2. Okay, so the guy that came into our school was a prisoner that escaped prison. So he was like, where are you? And he stood in there for at least 10 minutes. Then we thought he left, but he was completely silent and the teacher gave us a look saying, do not talk and do not move. So we all listened to the way he looked, and my best friend, the girl that stood up saying she would leave, got up and left. She thought that the guy was gone and she was going to get a counselor. So as soon as she got out of the room, we heard gunshots. As soon as the gunshots said that, I knew immediately what happened. I started crying and I thought that she was dead. The guy didn't even try to come in the room that we were in, even though he knew where we were. He immediately left knowing that he should have not shot the girl. Wait for part 3. Welcome to part 3. So as soon as the guy left, we got out of the closet and started panicking. We didn't know what to do since she was shot in the head and we knew that she wouldn't make it. So we were all freaking out and so was I, and I was crying and I just couldn't breathe right and I didn't know what to do. The speaker went off saying that the police and the ambulance were coming since the principal heard a gunshot too. So when the police came, they found the guy who was hiding in a locker and he got contained and taken to the police office. The ambulance were here and went in the room and took her. They said with their face saying she would not make it. That was the worst day of my life. So the ambulance took her and about 2 days later, we weren't allowed to go to the school since the guy was still on the loose. He escaped. So we all had to stay at our homes, and I visited my friend, and I didn't know she died. That was the end of the story. Thank you for watching.
Story time. My toxic best friend outed me to the entire school. So one day, one of my best friends from a neighboring school decided to move to my school, and she was extremely upset because her best friend over there came out as bi. So I ended up using this as an opportunity to come out bi as well. And she was like, well, it's okay for you. I just got really close to her. We'll call the girl Becky because no one likes a Becky, and we can call her friend Heather. So fast forward to after the situation had calmed down, we decided to all go prom dress shopping. So Heather and I were talking and we really hit it off. And I think Becky legitimately forgot about our sexuality because we were all talking about how much we have in common, and we brought that up as well. She just looked at us and was like, oh, I forgot about that. And she just shrugged it off. But we continued to hang out for a few weeks. One of these weekends, we all went to church together, and the sermon was about how God accepts you no matter what your sexuality is. But of course, Becky turns around to us and says that Heather and I could never date because it would F everything up. Later that day, Heather actually ended up admitting that she had feelings for me, and this is when Becky lost it. Stay tuned for part 2 and follow.
Story time about why my mom kicked me out when I was 16. So a little background information. This had all started as soon as my dad left my mom and I. I was like 13 around the time. Well, ever since then, my mom would have different guys in and out of the house all the time. Like, we were lucky if a month went by and she was still with the same dude. Which, I mean, I kind of get it because my dad did leave us for a woman that he had started another family with. But at the same time, it was just a whole mess. Anyway, so she had got with this new guy, and we're gonna call him Tyler. And by the way, the dudes that she would date, they would literally live at our house. Anyway, so a week after he moved in, I started getting really close to him, which usually never happens. Usually I would try to keep my distance because I knew how wrong it was of her having all these different guys in the house when I'm only 16. Anyways, every time that my mom